Hey, good morning. This is Chris Miller at Near and Far Gunsmithing in Goodyear, Arizona. This morning I've got a kind of a rare piece. Not very many of them around. I haven't seen anything on the net about this particular model, although the name is well known to most people. This is a Rohm, R-O-H-M, 22 long rifle revolver made in Germany. And a lot of the RGs have gotten a bad reputation in earlier years through the 60s and 70s being made as cheap Saturday night specials, they were called, in Florida. But they've been out of business in Florida for some years. And this particular gun looks like it was made in Germany. It's an RG-12 model. Like I said, it's not very common, and we're going to go through the disassembly of that this morning. So bear with me and we'll get started. So first of all, check the cylinders, make sure everything is unloaded, nothing in the chambers. Let's start with the taking off the grips. This is the single small screw on each side. And we'll set those aside here. Side as well with its screw. Make sure we line up our parts so we don't lose anything. So actually, to take this gun apart, we start by removing the cylinder rod, and the cylinder rod is here with a small handle on the top. What you want to be careful of is don't start pulling on this handle, because this is actually held in place, if you can see it here on the video, by a very small set screw right here in the frame. And there's a small nipple at the other end of that that actually goes into an opening drilled into the side of the cylinder rod. So we'll take that small screw out. You can see on the tip of the screwdriver how tiny that is. We'll set it aside here. And then that will allow us to rotate and pull the cylinder rod out. There's the handle I was talking about, and if you can see it in the video here, here's the small hole right there that the very tip of this small set screw fits in. Then we can open the gate and actually remove the cylinder at this point. We have a flat front on the cylinder. There's no, if you're used to taking apart revolvers, you're normally used to seeing a gas ring up here at the top where the cylinder rod actually goes through. This particular one is not made this way, and there's this washer. There's a small washer you can see on my hand there with a cutout. This actually sits under the edge of the barrel as it sits in the frame here, and provides the spacing between the cylinder and the frame for your head space, basically. So once we get all that done, we start with, you've got a trigger screw here, a hammer screw here, and a pin that holds in the cylinder stop here. But the first thing we need to do is release the tension from the mainspring that sits here in the handle and is actually held in place by a large set screw in the bottom of the grip itself. So we'll take that out first. Sorry, I'm trying not to get in the way of the view here. You can see as this comes out, it's just a fine threaded, very large set screw with a slot in one side and just a flat bottom on the other, so that it holds tension against the mainspring that's up in the grip. And so you turn it over and the mainspring just slides right out. And then once you've done that, there's a pin that you can see on this side that you can knock out. There's not much tension on it at all after you take the spring out. So that's the, I call it a drum head pin, because it's a pin on one side that you knock out from the outside to the inside, and this drum actually, the pin part actually goes through the head of this spring energy transfer bar that goes onto the back of the hammer at this end. And so when this is setting in the gun, I'll turn it up so you can see it. The head of that sets right there. It actually goes this way. The mainspring sets against this little nipple right here. And then the drum head pin fits into a rounded hole cut in the frame just for that purpose, to hold that in place. So we'll set those aside. So then we can come up and take out the trigger and let's do the hammer first. We can pull the hammer out the back now that we have the spring tension off. There's your hammer screw. It's about 1/2 inch long, got a long head on it, and then you can just pull the hammer out. And when we put it back together, we'll pay particular attention to how to get that back in fairly easily, and I'll talk about that on the reassembly. Then we can go to the trigger screw, take it out. And you'll note that the trigger screw and the hammer screw are exactly the same screw. Same threading, same cut, same length. So that will all come out together. Now then, we're going to take the pin out here to this, the removal of the pin then is going to release the trigger guard, and also is going to release the cylinder stop, which sticks out beyond the end of the trigger guard. If you can see here on the video, this little bar right here, actually this end of it sits on top of a spring and a ball bearing that sit down in the front of the frame right here. So when we take this out, it's going to release the pressure on this, and what you want to make sure is that you keep your finger over the end of this bar sticking out past the end of the trigger guard, the cylinder stop. So in fact, that won't spring away and go its own way. So we will start the pin out, and actually we still have tension because we have our punch in there. So what you want to do is just put your finger over the end of that right there where this cylinder stop is. Pull out your punch, and then you can raise out your trigger guard just like that, okay? And then that, of course, releases the pressure on this, the cylinder stop, and then we can also pull out the trigger and the hand. So now we want to be careful and take out the steel ball bearing and the spring that holds it in place, or the spring that it holds in place, I should say. So there's the spring and the ball bearing right there, trigger and the hand. And the hand has a flat spring on the end of it that fits up into a narrowed channel and actually guides it into out the window of the revolver itself. And normally when we put that back in, we have to manipulate that a little bit because the spring likes to pop out of the channel, and I'll talk about that when we do the reassembly. So there you have it, the Rome Model 12, fairly completely disassembled. The only thing that we haven't taken off this is a pinned barrel, has a pin at the top of the frame here, and that would allow all that to come out, and then there's an end cap with the front sight and the shell extractor, and that would all come apart as well. But I've already cleaned that up and made sure that that's nice and lubed. No reason to be taking that out. So we'll leave that all together, and there you go.